Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my podcast partner, Bob Duff. And this is the hockeydebates.com podcast. We come to you twice a week to discuss the hockey world, events in the hockey world. And today our special guest is former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who you may also know was on the Survivor Series not long ago and has his own, in fact, he has several podcasts that he does. Tom, welcome to our show.
Good to see you guys. Bob, I really give you a lot of credit. I'm sure you have to listen to Kevin all the time talk about all the Hall of Fame he's in. Like he's in like 27 Hall of Fame. Right?
Oh, here we go.
It's worse when he gets one of his Hall of Fame friends on, and then I'm the only non-Hall of Famer on the podcast.
I'm the same way. So
yeah, here we go. Yeah. Anyway, Tom, I wanted to sort of start looking at the hockey matchups that we're going to see once we break down to the 24 teams. And, even though it's not officially the playoffs, this first round is just going to be great hockey. And the matchup that I'm really intrigued by is the Rangers versus the Carolina Hurricanes. And I wanted to bring you on. You obviously are very close to the Rangers situation. They're a former player, and you do work for the organization in terms of out in the community. And I know you know that team well. And they were playing so well at the, before we hit the pause button. And like, what do you give their chances of knocking off the Carolina Hurricanes?
Oh, I wouldn't put it as knocking off. I think for me, based on the way they were playing, I like Carolina a lot, and they were playing well also. But I just think the Rangers were really hitting their stride. I listened to Coach Quinn talk the other day. He was on a podcast. I think Steve Alec was interviewing him, and he was talking. It was accurate. Like the first 2 weeks of the season, I think they played like 3 games. They had all these young kids they're trying to get in the lineup, so they get off to a really bad start. And just weren't playing their game at all. And you can just tell that their game picked up to the point where listen, the standings are what the standings are. But I just thought they should have been much farther ahead in the standings based on the way they were playing.
Yeah, Tom, when you look at the statistics, I just looked at them before we came on the air. Like it looks like obviously the Rangers have scored a few more goals than the Hurricanes. Not a whole lot more, but a few more. They're at 3.33 goals per game, and the Hurricanes are at 3.19. But it looks like defensively, Carolina has been the better team. But here's my question to you. That reflects the standings for the whole season, and I thought they got better defensively as the season rolled on, and as Adam Fox got more comfortable, as D'Angelo sort of figured out his place in trying to figure out how much he needs to carry the puck and how much he needs to stay back. So I'm not sure that their 3.14 is really representative. I bet they're pretty close to being with the Hurricanes in terms of defensive play.
Definitely. And again, I think that's a reflection on Coach Quinn getting the team playing much better all-around hockey throughout the season. And then you got to look at the 2 young goaltenders too, Georgiev and Shesterkin coming in. And listen, Henrik Lundqvist, but he wasn't the goaltender at the start of the year that he had been in the past in his career. And these 2 young kids coming in have just played fantastic. So that's a big part of it too. And the big debate here now is Lundqvist going to get a chance to play at all during the playoffs? And I don't think he is.
That was going to be my next question. So you think they'll start with the kids? It's kind of like Washington did when they won the Cup. Even though Holtby had been their #1 guy, they decided to start with Grubauer because he'd had the hotter hand.
Right.
I guess in a sense that's the best way to do it, is kind of let the kid have a shot, and if it doesn't pan out, you've got the veteran who's been through just about everything to kind of fall back on. I
think the only difference is, though, I think if one of the young goaltenders doesn't do well, I don't think they're turning to Lundqvist. I think they're turning to the other young goaltender. I think the difference there from the Washington situation is that these 2 young goaltenders, it is going to be their team. It's a clear message been sent that Lundqvist, days with the Rangers is over. He's had a fantastic career, really well-respected guy and works hard, professional, all those things. But they're turning to those 2 young guys. So if it's one of those 2 guys. Now, listen, if both of them don't play well, there's some kind of injuries, then obviously Henrik is there. But I don't think they're turning to him as a second option.
Tom, just following up on Bob's question, will they buy out Lundqvist's contract and let him then just go where he wants? Will they try to trade him? What do you think they'll do?
I forget. This is awful as an old agent saying this too, but he's on a no-move clause. Can they buy him out on a no-move clause? I don't think they can.
I don't even – that's a good question, yeah.
Yeah. So, if they can buy him out, I think they'd buy him out. But Kevin, you and I had this conversation too, that I just think that for Henrik, if you go back to the start of the year, or go back 2 years even, when or was it 3 years now, where they said that they were going to do this rebuild, and they gave him the option to send him someplace else, and he said, no, I want to be part of this. Well, now you move ahead, and he's still here, but he's really not part of the rebuild now. Like they've moved on from him. So I know he has been asked if he wants to get traded. He said no to this point, but I just got a feeling that, for me, if I'm advising him, I'm saying, Henrik, you're not going to play. Like, why have a great career like you've had here and then end up sitting up in the press box a lot of the times? I think they'll try to be as respectful to him as possible, because he deserves it. But you've got to get the 2 young guys in there. So I could see him. Maybe I would hope that he changes his mind, says, listen, trade me someplace, and not preferably like a Colorado or something that's got a chance of winning, as opposed to sitting around here and not playing at all.
It's an interesting matchup, and I actually wrote a betting piece last week on who I would pick to win this series, and said you got to go with the Rangers. And you look at the numbers since the Hurricanes won the Cup in 2006. The Rangers have won have not lost a season series to Carolina. There's 9 wins and 5 ties.
Yeah.
They've won 5 games in a row, outscored the Hurricanes 19-10 in those games, 17-9 in this year's meetings. All 4 of them went to the Rangers. They're 5-1 in their last 6 at Carolina. They're 18-1 against Carolina in their last 6 at MSG.
Yeah.
And overall, it's 37-14-1 since the start of the 2006-07 season in favor of the Rangers. Now, you've been in a lot of playoff series. How much do things like that have an impact?
Well, if you're the team that's dominated and you win, then it's a big impact, right? But you lose, then I remember times you go back where we were maybe dominated by the Flyers back in the early '80s during the regular season, and come in and beat them in the playoffs. I just listen, it's important, right? If you've got that confidence level, and obviously there's a reason that the matchups obviously favor the Rangers. It's to have that long of a streak of dominating another team. It's got to be that the Rangers somehow are a better team in some fashion. I just, but to me, the biggest thing for me is just the way the Rangers are playing. Like that, Mika Zibanejad, for example. I remember there's a game before the season ended, and they were up. Somebody who they're playing against came back and tied the game, and then the Rangers ended up winning overtime. And I listened to Brian Burke talk about the fact when the tying goal was on, he was saying, well, why the heck did they have Zibanejad on the ice? Thinking, like, in his mind, Zibanejad was just an offensive player. But I got to tell you, like, he's like a hidden secret, I think. And I know it's hard to say he's a hidden secret in New York, but man, he's another. I'm not saying he's Patrice Bergeron yet, but he's that same kind of player, a great offensive player, tremendously responsible defensively, great at faceoffs. I don't think people realize how good he is at both ends of the ice. And you talk about Panarin and Chris Kreider, their defensemen that Kevin talked about getting better now. I just think, yes, all those past statistics are important, but I just think the Rangers lineup is just. I just think it's a better team, and I think they play a better team game. I shouldn't say that's wrong to say. I shouldn't say a better team game than Carolina, but as good a team game.
Does obviously Carolina was one of the 2 teams that voted against this format. Ranger fans are obviously reading into that. They didn't want to play the Rangers. That's why they didn't like it. But does that become blackboard material, as the old saying goes, or does it even matter to the Rangers at Carolina?
Yeah.
They didn't like this system.
Did we ever find out if Carolina didn't like it because of the fact they had to play the Rangers? Was that their stance?
Well, Rod Brindamore came out and complained about they weren't rewarded for their success. He didn't specifically say they're unhappy they're playing the Rangers, but he feels like they kind of got, for all the hard work they put in this year, they got shafted in the way that things fell. Yeah. Figures they didn't get rewarded for. I think he's without coming out and saying it, he just doesn't like the format and the fact that teams that wouldn't have made the playoffs otherwise are in.
Right. Well, and listen, I mean, he's not going to say it publicly either, but Rangers, again, I just think they're playing that well. And I think other teams that have played against them recently just saying, well, that is a good hockey team. If I'm the Rangers, like, my confidence level is sky high. And I think that's the way they were playing too. Like that's a big part of it for me, from the start of the year to where they were when they stopped the season. It's just, you could see that team that they really believed that they were going to win every game. They really, even if they got down in games, it didn't matter who they were playing. They honestly, the way they played, you could tell that they really thought they could win every game because they were doing it. They've got the goal scorers to come back in games. I'll tell you, Panarin, I worked a long time ago, covering the KHL They would have the feeds come over here, and we would watch the games in a booth and broadcast the games. And Panarin was playing over the KHL at the time. And I thought, okay, he's a good player. But when he came over here to start playing, he had the great season with Chicago. I thought, he's not that good because I watched him before. That's just one season. He's playing with Patrick Kane. But I get to watch him all the time now, and he is unbelievable. Like, not just as a talented player, but he brings this kind of flair to the game. He's got the big kick, the Rockettes kick when he scores a goal. He's having fun out there. But he's also like one of the hardest workers, one of the most responsible defensive players they got. So I think they've just got this confidence about them, and he's one of those guys that brings that to the rink that, I just feel like any team that's playing against him, they're going to feel like they can beat him. Yeah,
and Tom, he's got such a high level of consistency, too. You look at his numbers since he's come over here, and every year he puts up, pretty comparable numbers to what he's had from the first year on. But I did want, you brought up Mikko Zibanejad, and I wanted to ask about him. When the Rangers acquired him, I don't think they thought, he's a 41-goal scorer this year in the abbreviated season. I don't think they saw him, scoring that much offensively. You mentioned the fact he's improved defensively. How has he improved offensively? Why all of a sudden does he look like a dominant offensive player?
Yeah, you know what? And you know me, Kevin, I always try to not give too much credit to coaches. I always say, coaches get too much credit when they win and too much blame when they lose. But I think since Quinn has come along, his like with all his players, but it seems like Zibanejad is one of those guys that's picked up on it more than most. Like he pushes to get the most out of each player all the time, and he has pushed Zibanejad, and Zibanejad has pushed himself. I think it's just his attitude towards the game. Like, his work ethic is impeccable. He comes to play every night. He's got that same way as Panarin. He's got that attitude when he gets a chance to score, like he's going to score. Like, he's got that mental attitude that he's prepared himself. He plays hard all the time. To me, it's just again the mental part of the game for him. He just picked up when he first got here. You could see the skill level with him, but he was, some nights he was good, some shifts he was good, and other nights he was, not so good. But it's just every game. There's very few games that he just doesn't play at a top level now.
Another old axiom we always hear around playoff time is that if you're going to win the playoffs, your best players have to be your best players. And looking at the numbers that Zibanejad and Panarin have put up against Carolina this season, Zibanejad played just 3 games and had 4 goals and 3 assists. Panarin in 4 games had 3 goals and 6 assists. So, those aren't just good numbers; those are dominant numbers.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, you're playing a short series too, right? So, and when we've talked about it before, I'm really a big believer that with all this long layoff, I just think those skill guys are going to have a better chance of playing better early on anyways, right? I think the defensive teams that have to kind of get their act together again, get everybody together, play that kind of more cohesive game are going to have a tougher time. They'll do it. It's just going to take a little bit longer. I just think those skilled guys and skilled teams are going to have a better chance early.
Tom, I know you're picking the Rangers to win that, but before we let you go, if the Rangers win this series, what will the story be? And if the Hurricanes win this series, what will the story be?
If the Rangers win the series, that means that one of their 2 young goaltenders has done what he's supposed to do. I don't think he has to be – one of them has to be fantastic, but I think they've done what they're supposed to do. And I think, like Bob said, I think the big players for the Rangers will have played big. The Zibanejads, the Panarins, the Kreiders, those players, D'Angelo, Fox on defense. And if Carolina wins, I think they're just going to out-team them. I think I love what Rod Brind'Amour does with his team. I remember when they had the backup goaltender come in from Toronto from up in the stands, and it's just amazing. And watching him talk to his team after the game, what he really accentuated with them was how proud he was of them, how much they played as a team. And you can see he's really reinforcing that all the time. And I think that's how he played the game, and I think that's what he wants out of his players. And then they do it too. So it's a matter of, can they get their act together early enough in the playoffs to do that?
Well, he's Tom Laidlaw, and you can catch him several times during the week. His hot podcast right now he does with his former teammates, Ron Greshner. Maloney's on there sometimes. Greshner's on. Ron Duguay. He has special guests every week. And that's on Thursday at 1 o'clock?
Thursday at 2 o'clock. And the women will love it too, because Ron Duguay does it from his bedroom. So, that's a big
that just makes perfect sense. That Ron Duguay does it from his bedroom. Anyway, we appreciate having Tom on. And Tom, hopefully we can have you on during the playoffs as well.
Absolutely. Love to do it. Good to see you again. See you, Bob.
Yep. See you later. Tom. That's former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who's always insightful. and knows obviously the Rangers, quite well. And Bob, I think that's going to be one of the more entertaining series, and it really feels to me like a toss-up. I think it could go either way, but the Rangers were playing pretty darn well, I thought, going into the pause. But Carolina, on the other hand, has been one of the more consistent franchises all year. You look at their home and road record; it was very similar. They've got guys too. Like, we didn't even talk about their team, but Zibanejad had 41 goals. Aho had 38. Teravainen had 48 assists. Much like Panarin, very consistent scorer this season as well. So it's going to be an interesting matchup.
Interesting to me too is there was a lot of debate about Panarin and the Hart Trophy towards the end, before the season got shut down, and the theory was the Rangers would have to make the playoffs for him to have a chance. Well, because of the way things have fallen, they are in the playoffs. So does Panarin have a realistic shot to win the Hart Trophy now?
Yeah, well, but technically he's not in. They're not in the playoffs. They're in the play-in round. But I don't know. I mean, I understand the logic of that. You got to get into the playoffs to be a Hart Trophy. But I'm not so sure that I think it's the hard and fast rule. If a guy has played well and been important to his team, even if they just missed, does that suddenly disqualify him? Like, to me, it really shouldn't. Should Marcel Dion never have, been a MVP candidate because his teams weren't always, great?
Well, and the other thing too, to me, is, here's a guy that came to a team that was supposed to be terrible. Like, they were supposed to be down there with Detroit and Ottawa and scrapping for probably a spot in the lottery, and here they are with not only in a situation where they're going to get a chance to play for the Stanley Cup, but if they get hot with the talent they have, they're going to be dangerous. I wouldn't want to play them if I was a team in the playoffs.
Well, no, for sure. And we've talked about this before, but the Rangers, and they're not alone. I would put the Montreal Canadiens, Toronto Maple Leafs in the category as well. There are a few teams, not many, who can attract a top free agent even when they're rebuilding, for whatever reason. You can go to New York and earn more money through the marketing of your brand than you can anywhere else. And you can go to Toronto, and sometimes just a lot of players have grown up. Look at John Tavares. He grew up in the area, wanted to always play for him, and that influenced him as well. So the Rangers were fortunate. Just compare that right now. Like, nobody's lining up to go to LA to play for the Kings right now. Nobody's lining up to go play for the Red Wings right now, because their teams aren't good. They're not far enough along in their rebuilds as well. So they were fortunate to land Panarin. I have another. We've seen since the rioting has happened in America, the athletes have stepped up, and I've been I think impressed is the word I would use, that we've had more NHL players than usually we have in the past. They're not guys that like to get out in the spotlight politically, and I thought Austin Matthews had a thought-provoking tweet. Anze Kopitar, who I would expect would weigh in, did. And then Jonathan Toews came out with a really well thought out, incredible social media post. And when you read that post, you kind of understand why this guy is so respected in the locker room. Because anybody who could, think that deep and have that great of an understanding of the issues that America is facing right now, probably is also pretty insightful in trying to keep a dressing room together.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that most of the guys who've come out and said things either seem to play for U.S. teams or are American-born. And in the case of Jonathan Toews, he's Canadian, but he went to North Dakota and he's played for the Blackhawks his whole career, so they're kind of more familiar with the American experience than, say, a guy who's played in Winnipeg his whole career or Edmonton, where, stuff like this generally isn't part of everyday life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's interesting though, Bob. Historically, the NHL has always been sort of a team sport to the nth degree. Not that all sports aren't team sports, but you sacrifice the individual accolades for the team, and we see that all the time. And usually in our sport, we expect our players to kind of toe the line and not say or do anything that's going to cause any level of distraction. Don't say anything that's going to create any controversy or to put you in the spotlight. But I don't know. I mean, it just seems in this situation that they've even the league came out with a statement. Some teams have come out, and I wonder. I think the NBA is always pretty proud of their players sort of speaking out. I wonder if the NHL is proud of the NHL players who are speaking out right now.
Well, and it's maybe this is reaching, but you think about on the ice though with a hockey player, if they see a teammate in distress, they're going to do whatever they can to help that teammate, and the heck with the consequences. Then if it's going to mean a 20-game suspension, fine, they'll deal with that later. But they're not going to let a teammate be in distress. So it's probably a reach to compare what happened to George Floyd to what happens on the hockey ice, but that was certainly a situation where a man was in horrible distress and no one helped him. And, the people, and I think on the ice, if you saw a teammate being endangered, you certainly, the hockey mentality is get in there and help him. You don't think about, what's going to happen to me if I try to help him.
Right. We still haven't gotten past the idea of whether, and I know you brought it up on our last, just the concerns you have about whether we should even be trying to play again. And Anton Stralman, the Swedish defenseman, brought it up. He has dealt with a lung disease since early in his career, which makes him more susceptible to the tragic effects of COVID-19. It just puts him in a higher risk because of that. And he's brought that up. It's like he's starting to wonder for himself whether, and we know obviously the rain, what am I forgetting? Domi, Max Domi in Montreal, and then Capo with the Rangers. The young, and the players have already been identified, and there's probably more that they're going to have to be concerned about.
Yeah, you wonder what the reaction is going to be of fans and of teams if there are players who say, "Yeah, I don't want to play." And
I know
we saw that. I mean, wrestling's not, it's not technically a sport, but we saw that when they decided to go ahead with WrestleMania, some of the wrestlers said, "No, I don't want to participate," because they thought this isn't a safe thing to be doing. And there's bound to be, will the players give in to peer pressure, or will they say, "Look, I can't risk this"? It's a real, a situation that I don't know what the right answer is. Is it, is Max Domi a bad guy if he says to his teammates and the Canadians, "Yeah, I can't put my health in jeopardy and participate"?
Yeah, well, no, he isn't, and everyone should be allowed to make those kind of decisions without any lasting consequences. This should be sort of a one-off that, if you're not comfortable, because we all make those decisions already, where some people are sheltering more than others. I'm choosing not to go out and socialize, but I know people who are doing that, and they're taking that chance as well. They're not wrong, and I'm not wrong. We're doing what's best for us, and taking the risks that we're comfortable with. And there's no reason why NBA players or MLB players or NHL players or whomever shouldn't have the same rights that you and I have to make those decisions. And you shouldn't to lose your job over it, or you shouldn't be treated any differently or viewed any differently, if that's the case.
But we're also living in an era where the social media police will come after you if they don't like what you're standing for. And, there's bound to be some yahoos out there. If, someone like a Max Domi or an Anton Strawman decides I'm not playing, there's going to be a constituency on social media that's going to attack them.
Yeah, no, that's true. And, there's always a knucklehead factor that you have to deal with now when you're a professional athlete. And, there's other, people associated with the game. They're going to have to make similar decisions. Gary Bettman, is he going to show up and for these games? He's at the age, I think he's in good health, but he's at an age where he's more vulnerable than others. A lot of general managers. There's at least one coach who's 65, Boness, and in Dallas, a lot of broadcasters as well, and I'm sure there's some pro scouts and that are might want to usually be a part of it that'll won't be there. And will the GMs even the older GMs, will they even show up? So there's a lot of decisions that have to be made. I've already heard. I'm sure he wouldn't want to be identified, but I've already heard from somebody who's involved in the broadcasting, and that he's not going to participate. So, I think everyone's going to have to make that decision.
Yeah, and this situation we've got right now with police and protesters, in close combat every night around the country, you wonder what's going to happen in 2 weeks from now. Are we going to see an explosion in cases again because of all this? There certainly hasn't been, on either side, a lot of social distancing, and you just wonder, are we going to see an outbreak amongst the participants in these protests, either the police and the military that have been, on the one side, or the protesters on the other? Because they're certainly not doing any social distancing on either side, and if that does lead to another significant outbreak, what does that make these people thinking we should play sports? Does that make them take a second look and say, hey, they got close together and look at how many people are sick now?
Yeah, well, and what's interesting is, if that occurs, it's not going to be necessarily the protesters or the police officers necessarily that's going to cause the big surge. It'll be that next wave after them. It's the people that get it from them, which could be exponential. And of course, if that's the case, that'll be right smack in the middle of when the NHL is going to be trying to come back. Like, over the next couple of weeks, we could see a smattering of cases, but that smattering of cases could lead to a big surge because, we all know that, one person can affect 8 or 10. And then that could come, sometime in early July when, these NHL teams are trying to come back. So, let me ask this to you, Bob. Do you think the popularity of hockey in America will grow because it's here in the summer and people are just starved for sports, and maybe they'll just embrace it just because it's pure competition?
Well, I can give you a betting analogy. Last Sunday, when there was a NASCAR race, there was the golfing exhibition between the Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning show, which everybody was talking about left and right. The number one betting sport in terms of money wagered last Sunday was Russian table tennis. So apparently, you would think with NASCAR being back that a lot of Americans would have gravitated back to NASCAR. So I don't know. Are people going to want to, Canadians I can see going to hockey rinks in July and August and September because it's their game. It isn't, for a large part of America, it isn't their game. That's not their number one game. And are you going to want to sit in a hockey rink in August when you can be out enjoying a beautiful summer day?
Yeah, well, Yeah, we won't be going to the hockey rink, but we'll be watching on television. So, but the point is still the same.
You're going to be indoors when you could be outside.
Right. Yeah, yeah. And when you're outside, you're less vulnerable. You know, because you're in the open air and everything else. So, well, as usual, a half hour has moved along quickly. We appreciate you tuning in, and we hope you join us later in the week on Thursday when we'll have another guest and probably start talking more in earnest about the matchups as we come along. It won't be long till we start having those play-ins. And like I said before, I'm not so sure the play-ins won't be the most exciting hockey we're going to see.
So, how many times have we seen the first round of the playoffs be the best round of the playoffs?
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone.
All right, we'll see you on Thursday. All right.